Well, hello. This week you're doing issues on foreign affairs, foreign policy, and foreign aid. And the challenge that always comes with that, to what extent should they be in the long-term best interest of the country? Or are they basically the result of political whims? And the articles you're reading this week talk about what difference administration makes in deciding how foreign aid is going to be distributed, what countries are going to get it, and to what amounts. And now you'll see, especially during this past year, the large amount of military aid going to Ukraine in their conflict with Russia, their war with Russia. As an example, how it's very flexible and can always anticipate what's going to come up and where the need is going to be. But the main challenge in foreign aid is how we look at it. Is it basically a free handout to other countries, or is it done to further our strategic ends, our strategic goals? So we have issues with immigration. One strategy in the use of foreign aid would be to provide foreign aid to countries to increase their economic basis, to increase their creation of jobs, to increase their quality of life and their standard of life. The extent that we can do that, we'll overcome some of the problems of why we have such massive immigration, that perhaps over time we can reduce that flow down to a much more manageable level. From a military point of view, foreign aid can also be considered part of a military response or reaction to challenge. We do that directly when we provide aid, when we provide equipment, and when we provide training. And you'll see we've gone a bit past that from a foreign policy perspective and from the perspective of foreign aid with the arrangements we have with Ukraine now, sharing intelligence and doing joint training. That's obviously much more military than specifically foreign aid. But they come out of that whole big discussion of how can we use the resources available to us to help prevent the United States having to get involved or entangled in foreign events, foreign operations. And part of that response is our traditional view of the United States as kind of being one of the peacekeepers in the world. And that becomes even more challenging in tough economic times. You've just seen the recent meetings between Russia and China. And that is an interesting bloc with a great deal of military power. And to what extent do they find common elements to agree with? And then what do we do to counter that? You can see by following the paper the massive involvements that China specifically is making in foreign countries that are all tied to their international support for what China wants to do and what they try to do. And the challenge with economics, and we try to be a bit more ethical, if you will, in the distribution of our foreign aid, but other countries tie it specifically. And once you get a country hooked on your source of revenue, your source of monies, it's very difficult to stop that entanglement. The United States obviously has been as guilty as any other country in some of those activities over the past years. But again, what's the purpose of it? What are we trying to accomplish? And to what extent do they just represent trying to further our strategic ends rather than just as a giveaway to foreign powers? There will always be abuses no matter who's in power, who's in charge. There will always be those events and activities that go outside the norm. And there will always be those events and activities that, when brought to light, not only appear to be, but oftentimes actually are significant cases of waste, fraud, and abuse. And those are the kind of challenges we have to look at when you look at foreign aid as an extension of economic policy, as an extension not only of the economic, but also of military, and the idea to try to create a healthy and stable international environment so that then we can go and challenge other issues, other things that need to be done in this country. And that, again, is one of the big issues. People look and see how much we're spending in other countries, and why aren't we spending that money here at home? That's a very interesting question. And oftentimes the response is we can either spend it now or we'll spend it later. It's great to be able to spend, and we have to find the balance between foreign and domestic aid and spending. We cannot walk away from the international market because we do exist in a competitive international arena today, perhaps more so than any other time in history. And that's made all the more critical because of issues like transportation, technology, as we talked last time about medical tourism, and even pandemic. The debates that took place over this being a China flu or something of that nature, as though it was a blatant attempt by another country to impact the world and through health issues. So there's a lot of reasons why we want to get involved and have a logical, rational policy of providing foreign aid to other countries in its furtherance of our strategic ends. And To that extent, it should not vary much from administration to administration, and yet it does. And as we talk about in other environments, we always have to realize when we talk about foreign policy or domestic policy or any other issue, that in government, there are two very different actors. We have the politicos, the political actors, who are where the debates occur over what we're going to do, how we're going to spend money, how we're going to redistribute resources, if you will. The government's job is supposed to be the neutral servant of the political process. And so you also want to avoid those entanglements, and those issues will come up a bit later on during our discussions. But from a foreign aid perspective, that's a challenge. To what extent should they be political? To what extent do we adequately explain the relationship between foreign policy and economic security, military security? And to what extent do we balance our foreign aid with meeting the needs here in the United States? So a variety of those topics are brought up during our discussions this week in broad terms, and so that'll be the challenge. So hopefully this has been helpful. As always, if you have questions or concerns, reach out. I'm available on email and try to respond as quickly as I can to those, and we're moving forward. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and good luck with your presentations and your papers. I look forward to reading them. Thank you very much.